Our good friend and one of the leaders of this group, General Ed Soyster.
Thank you, Lisa. You know, as Bud McFarland just mentioned, we've faced various difficult tasks through our service. And I find that today one of the difficult tasks that I have is to follow Bud McFarland with his very eloquent, very thorough discussion of this very important issue. So I think what I could add is I do have a lot of years of experience as a commanding officer and also as an intelligence officer. And I've had a lot of interrogators working for me in the past and studied this a little bit, to say the least. And I would tell you, as Bud has said, you don't get good information that you can convert into actionable intelligence by using any form of torture. And in fact, the whole concept, and if you're privileged to read General Haynes' book, he has some great examples from World War II, but this process of humane treatment, what we do as Americans, begins not when he's back to be interrogated, but at the first point with a bayonet. When someone is captured, the whole process has to be humane treatment, because my experts tell me if you get the guy warmed up in terms of good treatment, it's much easier to begin a good, effective interrogation rather than have already turned him against you by the time you're getting back. So it's important we indoctrinate our soldiers. And I remember looking at some combat films after the first Gulf War, and one that impressed me, which you don't learn much about tactics or anything from, but I watched two American soldiers capturing 4 or 5 Iraqis who were surrendering. Fear, you can see the fear in their eyes as they raise their hands. The 2 American soldiers spoke no Arabic. There was no communication, but I could hear them trying to assure the Iraqis that everything is okay. Okay, come on, everything's okay. We're Americans. And for those young men who had been indoctrinated under proper treatment, that reflected what I'd like to see our soldiers. All their explanation was, didn't reach the prisoners, but the reason they had nothing to fear was because they were surrendering to Americans. So it starts at the point of the bayonet and it goes all the way back to the interrogators. And so I would tell you very firmly, in my experience, discussions with a lot of interrogators, torture doesn't work to get actionable intelligence. And so it does work at one place. It works on television, works on 24 and some of the programs. It always works. The ticking time bomb scenario, which is used in some ways to justify it, first of all, we haven't had that situation. Secondly, it doesn't work there either. If you want to guarantee that the bomb's going off, torture the guy that knows where it is if you happen to have that. I would also say something else in terms of the role of the military. We take and ask our young parents to give us their sons and daughters, and we have an obligation to return those young men and women, we hope, better citizens, better people, give them some great experience, and certainly if we have a policy that would allow torture, and we teach these young men and women that it's okay, we have not fulfilled that rather sacred obligation for us as military commanders. So we believe that the Commander-in-Chief, whoever that will be, should immediately state very clearly that torture is out under all circumstances, and so that there's no issue about interpretation of where we stand as a nation, and our young soldiers can react accordingly, and we can have soldiers who really believe that it's not American, it's against the very values for which they've now stepped up to the plate and served. And so we hope that that will be the final outcome, no matter who's elected, and that we have clear guidance, and guidance like Dave Petraeus has put out. General Petraeus in a letter said, "Some may argue that we would be more effective if we sanctioned torture or other expedient methods to obtain information from the enemy. They would be wrong." And then he goes on to point out one of the realities of war. We are indeed warriors. We train to kill our enemies. We are engaged in combat. We must pursue the enemy relentlessly, and we must be violent at times. What sets us apart from our enemies in this fight, however, is how we behave. In everything we do, we must observe the standards and values that dictate that we treat non-combatants and detainees with dignity and respect. And he's got more points in it. So our military commanders, our current military commanders, recognize the importance of this. And so I thank you all for coming, and I have a special thanks to Human Rights First, as Bud McFarland has pointed out. Without their organizational ability, without their focus, I would say that it's fair, my colleagues would agree, we probably wouldn't be here today. But working with them as we have now for a couple of years, we recognize the importance of what an organization like that does. And as Bud said, Human Rights First has no peers. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, General Soyster. General